the Stars, and I am an intuitive astrologer, and I am bringing you the weekly horoscope on Turn to the Stars. And this week I wanted to talk to you about the upcoming sign Pluto square. And I've been talking about this in past shows as well. It was exact on April 18th. And with this particular square with the sun in Aries going up against Pluto in the zodiac sign of Capricorn is very, very, very important and very influential this week, all of this week, because this week is the last time these two planets are going to be forming their square in these two respective signs. So yes, this is the last time that the sun in Aries will be squaring Pluto in Capricorn for the week. I think it was about 240-ish years ago since this last happened. So it's definitely the last time that we're going to be seeing this square in our own lifetimes. So now the sun in Aries squaring Pluto in Capricorn is what we call an angular square. It involves two cardinal signs, and it pits them against each other because it is the nature of squares to describe the characteristic of conflict. We can see this easily because the sun is actually what we call exalted in Aries. So an exaltation is something that makes that the sun is very powerful, very strong in the sign of Aries. So, and Aries actually starts the beginning of spring when it moves into the sign of Aries, which was back around March, I believe the 18th. So the sun represents everything that's fresh and youthful and starting out in life. It's very, very robust, full of vigor and energy, and likes to be marching out in the world to prove itself, going on heroic journeys and great adventures. This is the sun in the zodiac sign of Aries, and it's going up against, meaning it's forming a square to Pluto in Capricorn, and Pluto in Capricorn has a tendency to sort of bring out that more old, crotchety, so to speak, unmovable qualities of the sign of Capricorn. And Pluto in Capricorn sort of speaks to age and the sense of kind of like I'm not going to move from this position of power and this position of authority that I have in life, and I will not relinquish this crown that I wear on my head for anything. So what you have here is a kind of like a Beowulf motive, and Beowulf is a story about a warrior. So when he was younger, he was a wonderful hero who was always coming to the rescue and slaying villains and doing all sorts of good in terms of liberating his people and rallying them around him. And then Beowulf, when he becomes the king, he holds on to his crown and throne jealously. He guarded jealously, and he won't sort of give it up at all. So, I mean, you've seen these characters all the time, like whether it's in the Hobbits or in the Tolkien stories or in the Lord of the Rings, or you've seen them in Game of Thrones, these kind of despotic kings who have to stay on that throne, and they stay there so long, and you're going to have to pry that crown and scepter out of their hands. And so the youthful energy comes on and says, I will defy and I will go at it. Basically, what you're seeing is a battle between spring and winter. That's what you're seeing with Aries, because we're coming out of winter and we're going into spring. So make sure I'm not covering up those dates. So the question that I want to ask you this week is, what is your relationship to authority? Authority is the thing that you can not live without, and the thing that you have to have in your life. Who are the authority figures in your life? Is it a boss? Is it a government agency? Is it a client? Is it a spouse? Is it a parent? And what has been their relationship to authority, and how much has it really changed? And how much of that has been transferred to you? So that's the word that I want to use. How much has it really transformed since the year of 2008 when Pluto went into Capricorn? Again, this is going to be pertinent to people born under the zodiac signs of Aries and Capricorn. But it's also going to be very pertinent to you if you happen to have Aries or Capricorn prominent in your chart, meaning that you have planets in the zodiac sign of Aries or planets in the zodiac sign of Capricorn, or you have Capricorn on the ascendant or rising, or you have either Aries or Capricorn in the midheaven, meaning the highest point in your chart, or you have Aries or Capricorn as a moon sign. But even if you have an angular fourth house, these are going to be issues that are going to be very powerful, very strong, and very resonant for you. So if you're able to look at your chart and identify these signs and where they are, if you have any planets in them, very powerful right now. And so the authority that we're talking about here is basically a patriarchal authority. Because I have found that Aries and Capricorn are two of the three zodiac signs that really speak to the father in a horoscope. What I mean by that is if you were born under Aries, Capricorn, Leo, then these chances are going to be very strong in power. You know, those people will be very strong and powerful figures for you. And if you can have three versions of the father, you have the heroic father, you can have the heroic, as I was saying, the heroic father. Aries is a symbol of a heroic father, authority figure, which is established by Aries, or sometimes what I call a coach dad, the one that sort of is encouraging you, if not coaching you or challenging you to be the best self that you can possibly be. So you can have Leo, which is the benevolent father, the big-hearted father, the fun father. Doesn't mean that if you were born with Leo, that your father was particularly benevolent, but that is referred or referenced at the time of the year because Leo is summertime, which is a time of abundant heat and light. And so Leo will represent the good father, the father that we always wanted to be in our lives, whether that person has been removed or he might have been someone who battled with his own handicaps, his own difficulties, his own trials and tribulations in life, things that would be associated to Saturn, which is the ruling planet of Capricorn. All the signs have planets that rule them. So here we have a square, a clash, and a square between planets. And it's kind of like you could think about worldwide wrestling. And we do have that going on in the world right now. And if you think about it, it's the two wrestlers in the opposite corners, and they've got their face paint on, their battle paint on, and their outfits look like each other. They go rushing out against each other and body slam each other, throw the other one down to the ground or up and over the rails. And all of these sort of things and the crowd goes wild. Like I got a picture of a gladiator. So this is what happens with the square, that planetary energies go at it. They become in conflict with each other. They become combative, or they become competitive with each other. Neither is going to yield. Neither of them is going to give an inch. Neither of them is going to allow for any leniency, as they sort of they pretty much fight it out. And what we do when we look at squares between, for instance, the Sun in Aries and the Pluto in Capricorn, is that even though we begin with this idea that they're fighting it out, they're very, very combative, what we do is we examine what they have in common. And as I said before, what they have in common is the idea of the Father. So it's the idea of leadership. It's the idea of authority. And what you're going to want to do is sort of ask yourself, what is your relationship to leadership and authority? How has this transformed since 2008? And I'm deliberately using the word transformed instead of change, because transformed is a Pluto word. Pluto is the planet of ordeals and the transformations that arise from them. So in other words, whenever you have a powerful Pluto passage, which we have had with Pluto and Capricorn since 2008, and it moves out of Capricorn in 2003. So whenever you have Pluto, very strong Pluto passage, there is this descent down into the underworld. So Pluto, when its day or its tenure assigns, begins with kind of like losing the things that the sign stood for in your life. So maybe Capricorn's turn in 2008 for you, maybe it stood for some sort of financial security or some sort of financial status. Maybe there was something about it that, whether you like the authority figure in your life or not, there was a solid authority figure that you could rely and depend on. And this was sort of replaying. So Pluto begins with the descent. This was the first thing to sort of unravel. So where to go, where to park, or to leave your life, particularly if Aries and Capricorn is very strong in your chart. You went through this journey. Either it was the loss of authority figure or having to leave an authority figure because maybe they've gotten too oppressive. Maybe it was being kicked to the curb or to the side of the road, something like that. So what began was a very deep questioning of what you could trust in your life, who you could trust. What could you trust? What could you trust in your life? To be a parent, to be a father? What could you trust in your life to protect? And what could you trust in your life to be secure? And what could you trust in your life to stabilize? So, of course, what was your relationship going to be to authority? So that's the big question. These are all the themes that would have been relevant since 2008. It started with 2008 because that's obviously when Pluto entered into Capricorn. And these are the things that you're coming to culmination right now. So that's why I'm asking you that question. What is your relationship to what's the word authority? What is the relationship to your father? What was your relationship to your father? What is the relationship like to people being in charge? You have two very different ideas. As I said earlier, with Aries, there's that heroic, fresh youth the sun is exalted in Aries. It's exalted in Aries because of the strong spring equinox when it begins. The spring equinox brings the agricultural years, meaning the time that we plant the seeds. And so there's this idea of youth and freshness and vitality, sort of going forward into the world, which is very much an Aries thing. So we have to also remember that Aries is ruled by the planet Mars, named after the Roman god of war. I talk about that in my class, The Language of Astrology, when I give the explanation of how the planets got their name. So it's not like the other two fire signs, which can be more about being true to yourself, or I'm true to my mission in life. So you can be true to your mission in life. The higher purpose that is coming through my life is very Sagittarius, or it's very Aries by nature. The fact that they are ruled by Mars are looking for a leader. A pet peeve, disclaimer here from me, I find myself often very perplexed as to why many, there's a lot of books in astrology that describe Aries as being a natural leader. And I've actually found the opposite to be true. I think that the idea of Aries as a leader comes from the fact that it's the first sign of the agricultural season. So Aries wants to be the first, and it wants to be out there, and Aries wants to take the lead. So that, to me, it fits with Aries, but the idea of leadership, which is all eyes on you, leadership, which is about giving direction, leadership, which is about delegating responsibility and sort of marshaling the four forces and organizing them, so that I find Aries not to be the strongest of the fire qualities. Aries wants to be the soldier or the policeman or the enforcer, who wants to be the person who enforces the will of the person in charge, and wants to be the person who makes sure that things are obeyed and that things are done. And Aries, because of its fiery nature and its rulership of Mars, is very much about things that are critical, and very much about things that are urgent, and very much about things that need to be done. So this is Aries. So Aries wants someone to follow them, very much wants a leader or someone in charge, but Aries doesn't just blindly sign on for this. Aries can get very critical about the person who's in charge. As you can see, the picture I have to the right is of a ancient warrior with his sword up and plunging into battle, which is very representative of this Sun square Pluto in Aries. So if Aries feels for a moment that this person isn't up to snuff, or that their credentials are a little wonky, they're not going to show the toughness and the firmness and the focus that we need from the leader. A leader should be better than who we are. As far as in Aries is concerned, then in Aries is true to something, David and Goliath. And, it's going to take a stone. They have typically some type of weapon, or, and so what on David and Goliath, he puts a stone into a slingshot, and he whips it around his head a few times, and they take the lion out. So Aries will be the first one to challenge the leader. and worldwide wrestling. They kind of like challenges that are dual, and they take the leader out and reveal the leader for being the weak-willed person. So this person who didn't have the character, this person who didn't have the backbone, this person who was inept or incompetent and didn't have the nerve or the courage to lead, Aries will reveal this. And so everyone applauds, and that was very, very good. So you will reveal this person who wasn't able to lead. That's wonderful. So Aries, why don't you take the crown and why don't you take the lead? That's where you see Aries get very uncomfortable. They're like, that's not why I did this. That's not what this is about. I was fighting just because, and why don't we give the crown to someone else? So Aries will go after fighting fire to overthrowing the tyrant. Aries is giving the responsibility of leadership to Aries. So I found that more often than not, go and give that crown to your mentor, that position or that place of leadership to someone else. So Aries is very uncomfortable in a leadership position because it knows that all eyes are going to be on it, and it's going to have to live up to this. And Aries doesn't always feel like it can. That's because this is a sign that really emphasizes striving over arriving. Aries is a sign which is about rising to the occasion of the challenge. But it's very suspicious of those who are in charge. And I don't know if it's an elitist thing or if it's, as you know, sort of like anti-snotty kind of thing, or, you know, people away from the heat of battle aren't really as real as people who are involved in it. I don't know exactly what it is, but this is something that I've observed. And so this is something that's going to be very much a part of the conversation or the dialogue that's going on. So let's flip it. Let's go to Capricorn. Capricorn is the person who didn't want to be the leader. Capricorns find themselves, they're the mountain goat. You know, you see the picture of the goat that represents Capricorn with its feet climbing up a mountain and out of the water. And so their tail is like that of a dolphin. And they're actually one of the most unevolved signs. So with Capricorn, we have this marvelous relationship between rams and goats, and they're not the same species. And how does that work? Capricorn is the mountain goat. It climbs up to its heights, and everyone will say it's ambitious, it's driven, it's powerful, it's hungry, and that's Capricorn, because they need to be on the top and things like that. So Capricorn needs to be in the top because Capricorns live with an enormous amount of fear. They live with their, you know, they're ruled by Saturn, and which rules over fear, chiefly fear. It also rules over things like anxiety, depression, insecurity. Saturn rules over all these things that nobody ever really wants to talk about that are considered weaknesses. And so their other signs can be paralyzed by their fears or hobbled by their insecurities or wrestle or compensate. And that goes very deep. So it's really interesting what's going on in the world right now with Russia testing their intercontinental missile. And what's happening, it's just very much representative of the Sun Square Pluto. So Capricorn usually goes up against normal, impossible odds. So again, our question is, what is your relationship to authority? We often think of authority as the person who's telling us what to do, or cramping our creative style, or a stuffy person. And it's actually, hopefully, I've described to you two stories that have a lot to do with authority, but they have maybe two different relationships to authority than you might have assumed or presumed. So it's constantly questioning the person who's in charge, Capricorn. Although ironically, it will follow their lead. And the other one is questioning their ability to be in charge, whether they're making the right decisions. There's a sort of criticism that comes with Capricorn, but is spurred forward by their fears and anxieties. And I find it interesting that what's below anger is fear. And so fears are coming up very powerfully right now. Capricorns don't, they typically don't do this for the glory. They do it because of the necessity, because they feel responsible, but they do it because someone has to step up to the plate and do this. Again, responsibility. Responsibility wanes large with Capricorns. So another quality that these two sides have in common is of ruggedness. There's little comfort that both sides have in taking on those particular stances, on these particular positions. So I was having a conversation with a friend a few weeks ago, and she was in a director of ballet, and I talked about ballet with them. And so simply because there's a martial element to ballet, meaning that there's a soldier-like element to ballet, what is asked of our body is more than most people couldn't possibly compare. It's really an athletic demand that's made upon the body to perform over and over again. Just like athletes, ballet dancers do this, and they do this with the knowledge that their body is not going to be in great shape as a result. Their bodies are going to suffer the consequences of the demands that are being made. And I've also spoken about the Saturnian quality to ballet. It really does have a strong Saturnian air to it. And also Aquarius is one of the rulers. Saturn is one of the rulers of Aquarius. So I'm going to talk about it in a context of bringing up the context of Capricorn, because Aquarius and Capricorn are both, as I said earlier, ruled by Saturn. And what we see is this idea of discipline and of severity, austerity. There's a discipline to ballet, like there's a discipline to all types of sports. And the whole point is to be constantly critiqued, to be constantly corrected. So we all experience some amount of criticism or correction in our lives, particularly in employment. This is how we can do a better job, or my days such as this are something along those lines. But we don't experience it to the extent that ballet dancers or athletes do. Athletes get a sort of like yelled at, or, they get, they're told this isn't working, you need to do this differently, or you need to do that differently. Their performance out on the field or on the skating rink or whatever is really gone over with great specificity, and that is absolutely what a ballet dancer does. And that's what they go through. Not only are they continually looking at themselves in the mirror, and they look at themselves in the mirror to correct their body placement and alignment, as well as memorize their body placement and alignment, because there's not a mirror in front of them. you're performing on the stage. But it's a constant critique that they also do upon themselves. You know, they're looking at themselves, they're looking at the other dancers in the company, and they're comparing. And so something which is a mainstay in the field of ballet is this idea of corrections. And it's also in the areas of sports and athletes, which is very Saturnian. It's always like, here's a correction. This is what I need you to do to make your performance better. And so dancers accept this. This is a dance of success. This is what being part of the professional company is about. And so the idea that they're going to get corrected is something they expect. The idea that an athlete is going to get corrected or criticized is something they expect. And so I found this something that was rather interesting. And then I thought about, and one of my friends mentioned this to me, what are the 3 types of dancers? And so the first type of dancer simply takes the correction, and that's what they want. And they take the correction, and some say, then there's this second type of dancer. And the second type of dancer says, they think that the correction has nothing to do with them. They think about that for a moment. And the second type of dancer thinks the correction has, as I said earlier, nothing to do with them. So, and then what's the third is, the third dancer is a dancer who thinks that they're getting a correction, and that means that they are absolutely the worst dancer in the entire world. So they have trouble taking criticism. So I wanted to talk about this powerful sense of authority that comes with this Sun square Pluto, that we're looking at where that sense of security, where that sense of authority comes within each and every one of us. You know, I always think about Pluto, and I'm going to leave you with this. And again, remind you that this is very strong, April 18th through the 24th. And I always, when I think about Pluto, and I think that one of the challenges that comes up with this Sun square Pluto is that we are driven to overcome the challenges that we face with authority. We are driven to find new ways to display or show our authority, but we're also having big issues with authority. And I think that the Sun in Aries, that part of us, wants to forge ahead. And then there's this powerful force that wants to be in charge. And so I think there's a lot of people that right now are fighting against authority. They are angry and have fears. Underlyingly, there's fear of change, fear of this transformation that is going on in the world. But I do believe that challenges bring us to a place of opportunity, meaning that we learn so much from the experiences. So I gave you a lot of different different forms that could be in. So I would urge you to ask yourself, how can I become my own authority? How can I overcome the challenges that are associated with this aspect? And we're definitely all growing through these experiences together. So everyone, if you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe and share it with others that you feel would be interested. As always, thank you so much for tuning in to Turn to the Stars. And I just want to remind you about my new book, Class 1, The Language of Astrology, which teaches you how to interpret an astrology chart in 8 classes. And I have made it in a PDF form. And I've also made it, I narrated the class, taught the class, and recorded it so that you can, print out the book, the PDFs, and maybe on your phone or your computer, listen to the narrated and stop it as you go, because it's a lot of information. It's 50 pages in all. And it's been my lifetime work bringing this book to fruition. So I've got Class 1 available. I'll very soon have Class 2, but take some time to digest the energy of, and the things that you're learning. That would be my recommendation with book 1. Class 1. All right, everyone, remember, turn to the stars and you'll find your answers there.